Hello beautiful people, my name is Kristen. I am so happy to have you stop on my channel, hear my book reviews for the books that I read in the month of July. I read 10 physical books and a digital book. The digital book was actually sent to me by a teacher from Kent, Ohio named Joseph Bruno. He wrote a story called Fire Burns All, and it is the story about three men who go down in their plane over Afghanistan into the desert and their story of struggle and survival. And it's a very raw, emotional, gritty book, and just enjoyed getting a chance to read that. So when it comes out, I look forward to maybe rereading the final version, and you know, just thought I enjoy those kind of stories that don't always just go with the normal, stereotypical, what you would expect kind of thing. So I also will hold up each of my books that I will talk about. That way you can scroll along to the ones you're interested in. I read 2 nonfiction books, so I will talk about those first this month. This is the first book I read during July. It came in my coloring and a classic book. It is by Tim Hardford, and it is all about inventions, and it's just really quick little reads. Some of them are only 3 pages long, but I think it's 50 inventions, and they weren't just the typical ones. They were some really interesting ones. For instance, the most interesting to me personally was the one on clocks, and it talked about the reason why clocks were developed and how those came about, and that technically, literally, it's noon for you, for me, when the sun is directly overhead. When the sun is directly overhead, that is noon. And wherever you are on the planet, that would be true. Of course, we know that different places in the world, the sun has different angles and all that stuff. Also, if you are traveling, which back in the day, before planes and cars, you didn't travel very quickly, so it wasn't so much an issue. But as you move quickly across the world, it became a problem to know what time it was, right? To know when to meet people, how to regulate things. So they made time zones and the creation of time zones, and just anything that deals with time. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I totally geek out all over that. So I was enthralled with that story in particular, but just the way that he writes, I would be very interested in looking up and reading some more, because I really felt like he did a great job of bringing in a personal little quip or saying something about a modern day kind of pop culture, if you will, based back to the invention that was talked about. So really enjoyed this book, one of my favorite of the month. Then I picked up something I got at the Dollar Tree. It's Pantsuit Nation, and I had thumbed through this. I want to share a couple of the stories in it with you. It basically just has pictures and stories, and I did not realize when I bought it, I just thought it was going to be a book full of stories. It did look absolutely like it was a lot of progressive kind of different nationalities, different women's rights, different voices that needed to be heard, if you will, to tell their story. But I did not realize when I bought this book that the thread that brought all of them together was they were all on a Facebook page that was voting for Hillary back in 2016. And I do not discuss politics on this channel. I don't feel like that is a helpful, healthy thing that I want my channel to necessarily be about. But it is helpful in reviewing this book that you understand that back in 2016, I looked at both the major candidates, and at that time, I need to support the candidate and the character, and I was unable to vote for the major characters, candidates I should say, but I very much support those who have fought and died for my right to vote, and I think no vote is wasted. I really don't believe that. So I went and wrote in a person of good character and that I thought would do an excellent job as president, and that was my vote in 2016. And the reason why I share that is to give you the background that I didn't do the same as anybody in this book, right? So that doesn't matter. the voices and the stories told. Again, this one here about an Arab American, and she's talking about her batch of baklava that always goes on her Thanksgiving table, and she's explaining that these kind of traditions are the reason why she wanted to vote for Hillary, support it, that it's a Thanksgiving, that it's about different nationalities coming together, and that is just as American to her as apple pie, which I thought was a really cute sentiment. And then I particularly wanted to lift up this story here about this couple here that voted, and at the end he says, "As I begin this new chapter with my husband at my side, I hope we all remember that love always wins. Hillary's message will live on," and then it's in quotes, "Do all the good you can for all the people you can in all the ways you can as long as you ever can." And I just thought that was so great, because that was said by Hillary, but she was quoting John Wesley of the United Methodist Church. And you know, the fact that she quoted Wesley actually makes me happy. So it's like, gosh, girl, you should be doing that more often. So anyway, my point on this is that we don't have to all agree on everything, even though I didn't vote the same as necessarily anyone in this book. I support them. I love them. I thought these were beautiful stories. I want to hold on to the book. I think it's beautiful. I am pro these people. It's America, y'all. We can have different views and still love and still support and still say, yes, I support baklava and love and grace and all those good things. So next, my classics. Okay, so this is John Milton's Paradise Lost, and it's a really fun classic that is written in poetry prose, and these little cliff notes at the bottom, I started reading them. So I would read it with the verse and then go down, because a lot of it was language that I don't use. It's kind of like reading Shakespeare. You know, we do not talk Shakespearean. So a lot of the things, but he was well educated. Like the things that he would talk about, he would bring in Greek mythology, he would bring in current events, and then the footnotes would tell you he's referencing this, he's talking about that, and just the commentary on it was really what made this book for me. Because honestly, I'll just be honest, if I had just read the poem, it would have been way over my head. So this was a great version. Let me see who publishes this one. This is the Modern Library. So that was a good version of it. And then I also read Sylvia Plath, The Bell Jar, and this is a really kind of fun, more modern classic about a young woman growing up in wartime, and she is basically has a mental breakdown, and so you kind of get a glimpse into who she is, what she's going through, and then just kind of in her head about these struggles and these issues, and just a really interesting read. I don't know that it's necessarily a feel-good kind of book, but it was interesting, and it must be the month that I'm reading some kind of mental health issue books, because I also picked up Wally Lamb's She's Come Undone. And so this is a pretty lengthy book, about 500 pages, 460 pages, about a young woman who is just kind of in the background of life. You know, one of those teenagers that's just so kind of socially awkward and just kind of struggling and wrestling, and she ends up kind of nurturing herself with a lot of bad eating habits and just sitting around, and she gains a lot of weight, and she kind of goes into womanhood as an overweight person, also struggling still with trying to find her identity. And it's just really raw and vulnerable and well written, and she deals particularly in detail with relationships and how she appreciates and understands romantic relationships. And it was, again, not one of those kind of feel-good fun reads, but I really appreciated it. And I appreciated the strength and the questioning and the internal dialogue and the kind of conclusions of life that maybe a lot of us kind of go through or wrestle with a little bit. So I think most people can probably find some aspect that they really kind of follow along with the character and have a fun ride of a book. And then at the Dollar Tree, I also picked up another Wally Lamb. I did not do that on purpose. I got home and then realized, oh my gosh, I'm already reading a book that is by the same author. And this is I'll Take You There. And this is a story of a gentleman who is the owner and manager for an old-time movie theater that still runs the reels, and ghosts appear, and they are the ghosts of women in Hollywood who were actresses and producers and basically kind of behind the scenes really big important people, but they never got credit because they were women. And they come back as ghosts and show film clips of his life as he's growing up. They basically replay his life for him and show him insights into other things that he has experienced similar to these women, because they feel like he can be educated and be of current modern voice on their behalf, if that makes sense. So it's a little heady, to be honest, but I like the concept. I like the author's style very much. I probably am going to pick up some more of his books in the future. I think this one was a better book than this one, but I really like the concept of this. I'm down with ghosts coming back and teaching us lessons. I'm just going to say that. If you got a book about ghosts coming back and teaching lessons, leave me a comment. Then I read The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin, and there's probably a lot of YouTube chatter about this. I know this was a big book when it came out. I think it was 2018. So you can look back at some of those for more in depth, because you could talk about this book for quite some time. You could have an entire year dialogue, I think, on book study. Now, the premise of the book is awesome. 4 kids go to a fortune teller whose gifting is to tell you the exact day that you will die. And she's just known to be accurate. And so the book's kind of looking at, what does it mean to know the day that you're gonna die? And it goes back to that time thing for me, right? Like, what are you gonna do with the time given? And so that's one of the main kind of concepts of this. If you have a short life but you live large, compared to you have a long life but you are fearful and you don't really live fully, and what is the best life? What is the best compromise? Which is a great question. I love that. That is fantastic. But the thing that stops me from really recommending this book is that I feel like the author made a checklist and said, let me think of all the controversial things that we could make a statement about. Let's have racism and war and teachers that take advantage of their position and government agents that don't behave right, and let's talk about police forces, and let's talk about diseases and immunology. Let's talk about PETA and animal rights. Let's talk about, just on and on and on. And at one point I was laughing out loud, because it was like, here's another issue that's brought up. I understand there's 4 siblings, right? But my gosh, that has to have been intentional, and it was so distracting for me. It was just, and rather annoying, to be perfectly honest. It's like, I am all about a book making you think about some issue. That is fantastic. That is a great use of your gifting. But to have every single issue, and I understand that it's tied into wrestling with the meaning of life, right? Do we live large, or play it safe, or all these kind of things? So I get that, and I can appreciate that. But at the end, I just it was a little cringy to me. So, very quick read. I think I read it in, 2 easy sittings. So, if you're interested in wrestling with that, or unpacking that, or dealing with it, but those are my reservations with it. Then, I read Eleanor Oliphant is perfect, completely fine, perfectly fine, completely fine. And this was also a very popular, very talked about book that I'm just now getting around to actually reading. It is basically a woman who has a routine, right? She dresses the same, she eats the same, every Friday she gets the same 2 bottles of vodka and drinks them over the weekend. You know, is just very regimented. She likes everything structured, everything known. She's just very proper about it. And then she's kind of dealing with her past, with dealing with trying to figure out about relationships, dealing with a relationship with her mother. We don't know exactly where the mother is, but she keeps on having phone conversations with her and just trying. So it's kind of a suspenseful mystery thing. It's a very developmentally character. I thought that she was very lovable and likable and easy to care about. And so I really like this book. This would be one of my favorite books that I read this month. It's not a high action packed, but it's a very character driven, which I tend to lean towards character driven. I also read a couple of feel good books, so we'll end with the feel good books. Oh, this is, oh, let me try to get the cover there. It says The Summer of Us. See, it's kind of pretty cover, so I want to make sure it gets a viewpoint of it there. So this is Holly Chamberlain, who I haven't read this author before, but this is basically a story where a bunch of young people are all going to come together. They've kind of joined like a networking system. They're all going to come together and pair together to rent a series of summer cottages over on Nantucket for the summer to spend their summer break. But these 3 get kind of left behind. They're either late for various reasons or they missed the memo or whatever. So it's 3 random people that basically end up in a house that's less desirable, the last of the pick. They didn't really have a good opportunity to pick their roommates, and so they're very different. But they form really, really tight women friendship bonds and start really being friends to one another and counseling one another and supporting one another and being real with one another, and got totally different backgrounds and walks of life and what they want out of life, but they're able to help each other. So it's a good beach read. I read it on vacation. It's a perfect vacation book if you're looking for one. The Summer of Us. And along that same lines, this is Jude Deveraux. I really love Jude Deveraux. I read another one, Wild Orchid, that actually had literally the devil in it, and ever since then I am totally a fan. I was like, that is really gutsy, girl, that you actually put the character of the devil in one of your books. So this is The Summerhouse. It is the story of basically around a mom who is dealing with the fact that when they moved in this house, there was going to be this little kind of, what do you call it when there's like a she shed, like the woman's kind of retreat, and she was going to have this summer house in the backyard, but then over the years it kind of turned into the dumping ground, and everybody had kind of infringed on her dream and her space, and she didn't really mind at first, and then it's kind of this kind of wrestling with it, like, wait, why do I always get the scraps in the family? Why is it always the mom who's sacrificing, kind of thing? And just kind of dealing with those kind of issues and some fun things that are going on in the town. Basically just one of those kind of easy, summer breezy, beachy kind of reads. So I thought it was definitely worthwhile for one of those, not a super intense book or one of those that you want to reread a bunch of stuff, but a fun getaway, easy book if you're looking for something on the beach or by the pool or a staycation on your patio. It's good. I put it up there. I'm going to read some more Jude Deveraux. So those are my book reviews. I'm really glad that you spent some time with me today. I hope that you will stay tuned. I've got a bunch more book unboxings and just awesome kind of things that I love to share. It's one of my favorite things to do. So if you have a favorite book, if you're interested in reading one of these, leave me a comment below. I look forward to the dialogue. Y'all take care and have an awesome day. And they are on a plane that goes down over Afghanistan desert. I'm like we'll start. It is a classic, so these are a couple of my classics I read this month, and I got the lawnmower now.